Hey everybody, it is Monday, December 22nd, coming off a Zoom call with Adrian Hauser, the newest Giant. Um, that was official last week. That was the busiest week of the offseason so far for the Giants. What I wrote, what I said on the podcast, I'll say here as well. It should not go down as the busiest week of the offseason. So far, it's been the busiest week, but they have a lot of work to do. And I think, those moves that they made last week, the two moves they've made, those are going to be kind of dependent on what else they do and where these guys slot in, Adrian Hauser and Jason Foley. But I'll start with Hauser because he is going to be a big part of 2026 potentially. 2-year deal, 22 million. Just spoke with beat reporters, talked a lot about the velocity that he got last year, some changes mechanically last offseason, some changes to his diet. Went to the carnivore diet, which just a lot of meat. Started doing some fasts, did something physically to put himself in a better position, but mostly the mechanical changes that he made and those things he felt like he was more on his backside. He was a little bit freer with his hands, and he ends up gaining about 2 miles per hour, and that continued the entire season. It was an interesting season for him. He starts the year in AAA, gets released. He ends up in Chicago, is really good in Chicago, gets on the Giants' radar. I think if they had not gone in the tank, that last week of July, he was a real strong candidate to be a Giant over the second half. They were looking at him at the deadline and somebody they liked and somebody they thought could really add some innings, which they ended up needing anyway. But obviously they went into sell mode at the deadline. But he goes to Tampa Bay. The numbers aren't as good, but the velocity was still there. Ends up about 2 miles per hour across the board last season. His slider was way up. It turned into more of a cutter by the end of the year. But the sinker was up to 95 miles per hour, which was a huge deal for him and something he thinks is going to be sustainable going forward. Not a lot of innings on his arm. So this is the classic, like you're trying to buy low. You're hoping that the best days are ahead of him if you are the Giants. And they need that because they need some upside in this rotation. He is somebody that does not have a whole lot of experience, he told us, with really anybody on this staff other than or on this roster other than Willie Adames, who he knew in Milwaukee. But Zach Manassian has been on him for a while. The Giants general manager, he was part of trading for Adrian. He was in that Josh Hader, Astros, Carlos Gomez, that huge trade years ago that came after the trade fell apart with the Mets with Gomez. That you probably remember that from Wilmer Flores crying on the field. But anyway, Milwaukee had to scramble and they end up getting Hauser as part of a big deal between the Astros and the Brewers. And Zach has liked him for a while and they're hoping that he brings some upside. So we'll see what this ends up becoming. We'll see what the velocity, how much of a difference that makes for him going forward. Certainly was promising last year in Chicago, not so good in Tampa Bay, although the Giants kind of look at that as a bit of a minor league ballpark, which it was, but a tough situation for pitchers. So they think he'll be much better in San Francisco, as most guys usually are. I think the key with this signing is he the three? Is he the four? Or is he the four or the five? Like is there somebody else who's coming in who is a better bet than Hauser moving forward? If that's the case, there's still a lot of guys in free agency. The top of the market is still out there from Framber Valdez, Tatsuya Imai, Ranger Suarez. You can go to guys like Zach Gallen, who's still out there. If somebody comes in who slides in as like the number three behind Logan Webb and Robbie Ray and Landon Rupenhauser at the back end, that's fine. That's it's a pretty good rotation. If you go into the spring with Roop and Hauser as your three and four in some way, and you have a competition with all the young kids for your five spot, I think that's a problem. I mean, Zach told us the other day they're hopeful in free agency and trades. They're still active on both those fronts. But he did say that they won't consider the offseason a failure if they don't sign one more starter. I personally would consider the offseason a failure if they don't sign one more starter. But I think they want to add there. They want to continue to add to this group. And for their 2026 hopes, hopefully it's somebody who slides in ahead of Hauser. Not to take anything away from him, but just not a whole lot of big league experience and not a whole lot of sustained big league success outside of Chicago last year, which was a pretty small sample. There's been other good seasons, but only one season for him has he made more than 21 starts. So there's upside here, but they do need a little more certainty, I think, for the rotation going forward. As for the bullpen, I really like the Jason Foley signing. The more I looked at it, the more I went back and looked at some clips of him and him in Detroit. There's a lot to like. I mean, it's a guy who throws 100. It's a guy who had 28 saves in the big leagues 2 years ago. Now, why is he available to the Giants for $2 million? It's because he had shoulder surgery, and that you never know. I mean, that is worse than Tommy John. Tommy John it's like a running back having ACL surgery now. Like you just know he's going to be back at some point and everything will be fine. And sometimes these guys are better afterwards. Tommy John has mostly become that way. Shoulder surgery is still really concerning to teams, and the rehab can be a little bit more complicated, and sometimes they don't come back quite the same way. So that there's some risk involved here, but they also are pretty confident, having looked at the medicals, that he will be ready by June or July. And it's a really good background. You look at what he's done in the big leagues, what he did in Detroit. He is somebody who can potentially close games for them down the line. I don't think in 26 necessarily, but 2 years of control after this one, this felt like a really savvy move to me as somebody just to add to your bullpen. You're going to have to wait a little bit, but and it might not be right away. I mean, we've seen with some of these guys, it takes some time for them to get back to full comfort on the mound. But with 2 years of control, I think if he shows anything next season, you feel pretty good about the following year. And like this is someone who can pitch in the eighth or the ninth for you down the line. Now, again, the caveat, just like with the rotation, what else is there? What else is going to be added to the bullpen? So far, they've added two guys who are coming off surgeries, two guys who I just talking to people around the game, very highly thought of, but not fully healthy, not healthy last year. They do think Sam Hentges is going to be fine and feel good about that and his potential to be ready in spring training. But you look at the opening day roster, you look at that first game of the Major League Baseball season against the New York Yankees, like, let's say Logan pitches really well, you're up 3-1. Who's pitching the seventh for you? Who's pitching the eighth? Who's pitching the ninth? We think Ryan Walker will be involved in some way. Eric Miller should be healthy, but who else is in that mix? I don't think they've quite figured that out yet. I know, we know they haven't quite figured that out yet. So just like with the Hauser thing, the question here is what else are you going to do? And the problem for the Giants right now, and maybe not a problem for them, but basically all of the closers are off the market. Pete Fairbanks is left, but basically everybody else with experience is gone. So unless it's Fairbanks, we're probably going to have some guys who just don't have a lot of experience in the late innings fighting for that job in spring training. And people who listen to Giants talk know that I'm a big believer in Ryan Walker's ability to bounce back next year and be a really solid late inning guy for him. I think he will, and some of these young guys will break through, and you never know. I mean, a Hayden Birdsong, he might turn into someone in that mix, or they'll find guys. But I do think that's one spot heading into the new year where there's just not a lot of certainty in that bullpen, and it's a little scary because you are counting on finding guys in spring training and hoping that a Piguero, that a Walker, that Bivens, that all these guys take the next step or that these guys get back to what they were before. But there's just not a lot of certainty at the back end of that bullpen, and most years, and you look at last year going into it, they knew what they had in Tyler Rogers. They knew kind of what they had in Walker and Duvall. They end up switching places at times the last couple of years, but there are guys who had experience there. So that's something they're lacking right now. I do think they could use one or two more guys. And it's probably going to be minor league deals, non-roster invites. They've really telegraphed that's the way they want to do this, is not spend a whole lot of money on their bullpen. But they need some more certainty at the back end there. So Foley, I really like that signing, but it is something that I think is more of a second half, and probably more of a 2027, just in terms of real impact. Overall, the Giants here on Monday, December 22nd, they have added less than $15 million to their 2026 roster. The good news for them, there's still a ton of talent out there. I mean, I don't think they're going to do this, but even if you want to look at the outfield market, Kyle Tucker's still out there. You look at kind of the second base market, there hasn't been a Brendan Donovan trade yet. I mentioned the starting pitchers. So there's still a lot of ways for them to get better, but we will see. So far, it's been relatively quiet, and we'll see what they're able to do here before I film another one of these. One more thing from last week I wanted to touch on. Logan Webb will pitch for Team USA. That is a big win for Team USA. That's a big win for Logan. It is something that I don't think this is, they didn't hide it very well. The Giants just didn't want him to pitch in the WBC. I mean, they were hopeful that he would maybe pitch the next time around. And you get it. I mean, there is some risk here every time you take the field, and especially a pitcher, you're ramping up early. Even somebody like Logan, who's automatic 200 innings every single year, you still are starting a little bit earlier than you normally would, and you're pitching really, really highly competitive innings there in March, when oftentimes you'd be on the backfield somewhere in Scottsdale just getting your work in. So there is a little bit of risk, and Buster talked about that at the winter meetings, and didn't really hide the fact that he preferred that maybe he wait until later in his career. But I don't think they could have, for a number of reasons, they couldn't have really shut this down. One of them is Logan wants to pitch. He's earned that right. Scooble signed up the same day, a guy who has $400 million on the line. So, the Giants don't really have a leg to stand on. And also like I don't think you can really tell your guy like, hey, our whole season's on you next year. By the way, we haven't done a whole lot in free agency, but we don't want you to pitch in the World Baseball Classic just in case. So not really anything they could say to keep Logan out of it. I know he's excited to pitch and absolutely loaded rotation. Paul Skeens, and then Scooble and Webb in some order, or those three in some order. Scooble might go first. We'll see. But those three at the top of a rotation for Team USA as they try to get back to the top. Obviously, they finished second last time, and it'll be in Houston, I think, like the second week of March. So that's what's ahead for Logan. Something he's excited about, and it'll be fun to watch next spring. And the Giants will just hope that everything goes okay and he comes out of it healthy because he is their most important player. I mean, there's no way to replace those 200 innings. They can find replacements elsewhere on their roster, but absolutely no way to replace what Logan Webb gives them year in and year out. But he takes good care of himself and should be fine. And one other thing, Dave Greshner is the trainer for Team USA, so they'll have an inside voice there to kind of keep an eye on everything. So anyway, that's what happened last week. A busy week for the Giants. We don't have a full coaching staff yet, which is kind of incredible. Here on December 22nd, it's done. Contracts are done. They're just kind of deciding exact roles on, sounds like one or two guys. Sounds like just the base coaches, just figuring out exactly how that's going to go. So nothing imminent there. We'll see where that goes. We know all the names, just trying to figure out who's where and who's in more notable spots. But that should be coming down the line. We'll see what else happens over the next couple of weeks. Usually pretty quiet over the holiday break, although Zach did tell us he's staying with his brother Perry, who's GM of the Angels. So there's going to be a lot of baseball talk in that house. And he plans to work through the holidays and try to continue to find solutions for this roster, which needs them. I want to say, as we head to the holidays, thank you to everybody who watches here. It's been fun doing this year. A lot more ahead next year. Hopefully more ahead this offseason. We'll see. That was a somewhat busy week. We'll see if there's more signings that put us maybe on like emergency pod watch, emergency YouTube video watch. But anyway, happy holidays, everybody, and I'll be back when the Giants do something else.